Welcome to 2Cents FC. I'm your host, Amobi and Okugo. Each week, we'll be talking with individuals from around the soccer world, learning about their stories and getting their unfiltered thoughts and opinions. This week, we're joined by former MLS Pro, Cal Bears Hall of Famer, and media personality, all-time legend, Calen Carr. We're going to be getting to know all about Calen, talking about his career, and learning more about his off-pitch endeavors. Calen, how you feeling today?
I'm good. Thanks for the kind intro there. I appreciate that.
Most definitely.
Like
you're a Cali boy, so I had to do
it. Yeah, Northern California at that too. So yeah,
exactly.
we got
a lot of SoCal boys, so nice
Even
to have
though
a
you went to
NorCal.
Cal Berkeley, even though you went to Cal Berkeley, I gotta take NorCal as precedent.
Yeah. We won't talk about some of your choices. We'll leave that to another show.
Most definitely. So let's start it off the only way we know how. L.
All right, two truths in the cap. So if you're familiar with the show, this is an icebreaker game that we like to play with our guests, where Calen will give us 3 facts about himself. 2 will be true, 1 will be a lie, and Amobi and I have to guess what the lie is. So did I score last week, Amobi?
No, you did not score last week.
I didn't score last week, so we still 3-1.
Yeah, we're still 3-1.
Still 3-1. All right. So whenever you're ready, Calen, kick it off.
Well, I was listening. I'm visiting my mom here in Berkeley, and I was driving earlier today. Just around, and I was listening to one with Jimmy Conrad on 2Cents, and I was like, did Jimmy really meet Rihanna? And she asked him for a photo, and I was like, no way, like that's cap, right? And so this is like a lot to live up to at this point. So I felt some pressure coming on, because if you just come with some weak stuff after Jimmy's kicking it in Brazil with Rihanna, I was like, oh wow, I'm in trouble. But I focused on music. I was inspired by that.
Okay.
So number 1, I introduced Flo Rida at a concert. So I played Flo Rida's hype man. Number 2, I did an impromptu dueling pianos with John Legend.
What?
So impromptu, head to head.
Mm.
And then number 3 was I kicked it backstage with Carlos Santana.
Man, this guy is this. This might be the best one. He's continually get better. How about the name drops though? Wow.
I mean, there's no Rihanna in that list. I mean, she takes the cake, but.
That's
dueling pianos impromptu.
You're living in New York. I know your mom is a teacher, and I know she like stressed you learning extracurriculars, but I don't know if it was piano. This is gonna be tough. You do hosting, so Flo Rida. I think Flo Rida has done some soccer event. Yo, this is. I'm going backstage, Carlos Santana. I think it was like another artist. I don't doubt that you were backstage with artists, but I don't think it was Carlos Santana. So that's my cap. But L.
I'm gonna say dueling pianos with John Legend. It's the cap.
All right, I give it up.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah,
you got it, L. It's the John Legend one. Sorry,
coming
Amobi.
back from 3-1.
Amobi, I do appreciate you think that I have game like that I could duel with John Legend. And I was trying to throw you off because I know Stu Holden hangs with John Legend. I see him on Instagram all the time, so I was like, "There's a possibility." But I do not play the piano. I cannot play the piano at all.
Okay, you
the
do
Flo
play
Rida one,
right?
No, I took piano for 1 year as a kid, and then I quit to play soccer. And then the Flo Rida one was actually at MLS All-Star in San Jose in 2017, I think. But very bizarre, just because I was not expecting to, I'm like covering soccer, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, so we have this concert and we need someone to raise their hand to intro him on stage. And I was like, all right, this is a once in a lifetime. I was like, I'm going to go on a podcast one day and talk about this.
Here we go.
And then the Santana one is true. Actually, when I was in Chicago, a friend of mine, was dating his daughter, so we got to go backstage and hang out, and I was like, damn, this is a legendary experience. So yeah,
that's amazing. So you mentioned you did do piano for a week, and then you decided to make the right decision and
a
go
year. It was
into
a year.
soccer.
I stuck it out for a year.
Sorry,
I stuck it out for
a
a year.
year. You decided to make the right decision and go into soccer. When did you fall in love with soccer?
I think there was actually, well, there was kind of like two moments. Like the first time that I think it really clicked for me was when I was, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and my mom put me in like kind of everything, as you mentioned. You did your research well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we she had me do everything. So I like did yeah, I was involved in music. I was involved in all kinds of sports: basketball, track, soccer. She went to like a ballet class actually as a kid.
Okay.
um, so I was like trying everything, and then I went to a soccer camp, and I just went 1 week, and I remember just enjoying it. And I think on the last day I got some sort of like, I can't even remember, I think it was some kind of like dribbling award, and I was like hooked from then on. I was like, I need to go back next week.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, all right, yeah, like you can go back next week. And then I was like, I need to go back again. And every week I won the like dribbling award. And I think I was
Yeah.
there like 9 weeks, and the summer was over. And like that was kind of it for me. I was just kind of hooked. So there was nobody in my family that really had a soccer background or anything like that. My mom's an academic. My dad was in more of like engineering, and he was a like worked for the United Nations. So I didn't really have like a soccer background or a sports background, but I just kind of fell in love with
Yeah.
it then. And then the second moment was the '94 World Cup. And I went to the U.S. Brazil game in at Stanford Stadium, and I just remember being
Wow.
like, "Whoa! Like, what is this? Like the Brazil fans, like the
Yeah.
yellow jerseys. Like, I don't really remember a ton that happened on the pitch, but I remember the whole like surrounding atmosphere, and I was
Yeah.
like I'm all in."
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that in a little bit. But for you, one of the things I like about you is that you get along with everybody. You're well versed, and we definitely did our research. Your mom, immersed you in different things. Your dad comes from, original background in from Australia. Talk about how much that influenced your upbringing.
Yeah, I think like as I've grown older, I've really appreciated kind of more of that backstory, and maybe gotten some more perspective as I've traveled to realize kind of how unique it was in a way. Because I think when you grow up, you're just like, I don't know, I'm just like playing soccer and hanging out, and you kind of think everything is normal. But yeah, my dad is from Alice Springs, Australia, which is like the center, the heart of Australia, and he's Aboriginal Australian, so Indigenous, and they have a huge family there, a real deep history. My mom comes from like a very different world. She's from Indianapolis, Indiana, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she took a little bit of a different path, as did my dad, to kind of like leave where the area that they were from. So my mom went to college in Chicago, and then was doing anthropological research in East Africa. And my dad left Alice Springs and ended up moving to East Africa as well to do water engineering. And so they met there. And it was a very like, two different worlds in a lot of ways. But I sort of joked that like if you were to have that sort of backstory, like Berkeley would be the perfect place to
Yeah,
land. Like
that's
where
true.
else could you go?
Yeah.
My mom was already there at the time, but she wanted to come back and raise me when she knew she was going to be having me. So I grew up with just my mom actually here in Berkeley. She's a professor at Berkeley, so I kind of like grew up on campus. Ended up playing soccer at Berkeley, and doing my studies there. So yeah, it's kind of a unique backstory. I'm actually back in Berkeley now. I'm in my mom's office doing this podcast recording. So I try and come back here as much as I can, and I think it definitely, like growing up here, it's just a unique place, and I
Yeah.
think it's definitely like influenced the way I see the world.
No, that's amazing. How connected are you to, the culture of your father? You mentioned, at the epicenter of Australian, origin and history.
Yeah, I was always so I grew up with just my mom. So
Mm.
I would say I learned about my culture and history more from afar, just
Okay.
based on like geography. But my mom always did a really good job and felt it was really important for me to understand that history as best as I could. And so whether that was like learning about it or like having like Aboriginal art around or like understanding as best I could that culture in the absence of like a close relationship with my dad. I was always really proud of that. And I think like even when I think about like some of the like school projects that I was involved in growing up or like things when you get to do independent studies, I was like I went like deeper into that to understand that.
Yeah.
And I think it was partly because like it's so unique that
Yeah.
in a way like I felt like I really needed to kind of like as a part of like understanding myself, I needed to understand that part of my history. So I went back to Australia. I've only been there once. I went back in 2007 and I met like all my family
That's
for the first
amazing.
time. And I have like 5 half siblings. It's like a big family too.
Yeah.
So it was like a really powerful experience for me to like actually be there. It's not even like close to really fully understanding the culture in like a literal way. So I do want to go back and spend more time there. And I also got my Australian citizenship when I was in college.
Oh.
I would say it was like just for like out of pride, but honestly, at that time, I thought it was gonna get me like a European passport in the UK
Yeah.
to like try and play abroad. So I hit up my family there and was like, hey, how do I go about this process? And it wasn't too difficult because you know if you're Indigenous
Yeah.
people, like I feel like you should get a passport. So made it happen. It didn't end up working out for playing abroad, but I think it'll make it easier for myself to get to experience it and go back whenever the time's right.
No, most definitely. And then you
Sure.
grew up in Berkeley. There's a lot of different influences, Berkeley, Hayward, Oakland, that whole region. A lot of stuff happening. Can you talk about some of the influences you had, like not only on the field but off the field, growing up in such a smart community, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. Berkeley's a weird place. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun.
I
I
was
live
trying to
in
say it in
Brooklyn
a
now.
nice way.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I think it's like I don't know. I feel like it's like a point of pride here,
Yeah.
and it's just like I grew up seeing just like some wild stuff, right? Like there's just
Yeah.
like naked people walking around sometimes. There's like always a protest on campus. Um, it was really cool because based on my mom's work, like she would often have students come by and she would do like presentations at our house, or they would have kind of like graduate students over and I would learn about kind of like what their studies were. She'd show like slide projectors because I'm old and that's what we were doing at the time. And like, so that was like a really cool place. And I also just think like, um, just like things that I wouldn't think about or I thought of were normal, as I was mentioning before. Like I saw Nelson Mandela speak at the Oakland Coliseum when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was on my uncle's like shoulders watching him when he got out of prison.
Wow.
And I was like, just like stuff like that where you're just like, it just kind of almost forgot about that until just now, and you just are more around that type of environment, which I think was really cool. From the soccer side, it was like way less organized, I would say, than like where you grew up, like in Sac. There's like big clubs and really like much more. I would say like there's like super clubs there, and you hear the same thing in Los Angeles and Southern California, where I feel like in the Bay, I was like I was like Nicholas Anelka. I was like switching squads every couple weeks. Like it was like I was playing here, I was in
Yeah.
Berkeley, then I was in Oakland, then I went to Marin, then I went back to the East Bay even deeper. So it was like I was constantly looking for the best places to play. I was playing pickup. I was playing with like men's teams. I was really just trying to get in the best environment, and so I think in some ways that's not the best thing. Like I've seen that improve a lot since I've been back. But I would
Yeah.
say, in a way, there was something good about that. I think because I was constantly being put in new environments.
So can you like use this moment to stake your claim? Because I feel like I'm on like by myself screaming out loud when I say NorCal has talent. You coming from the Bay, Cal Berkeley region. We've had a lot of people from the DMV. We've had a couple of people from SoCal. But this is your moment to stake your claim and help me, emphasize how big NorCal soccer really is.
I mean, we'll never be able to, like, the SoCal guys are too loud. They're all like they're all, everybody. I was gonna say something about UCLA, but I'll wait.
hold on.
I'll show respect, but no, I think there's a different. It's funny because whenever we play in LA, a lot of friends or teammates that were from like other countries or further away would think like, oh, are you gonna have all your family here? And I'm like, no, it's like 6-7 hours from here, especially to the Galaxy. So it's like that separation is real. Like, it's a very different atmosphere in a different place. So I think, like, as far as talent goes, like I played club soccer with Wando. So, like, if you just want to go by like goals and you want to start there, like, I chipped in a few, but like Wando has run away with the whole thing. And yeah, just like so many players. And I think something about, like, you see it more, I think, easily recognized in other sports where you see players who've come from the Bay that are like, or Northern California, where it's like, whether it's like Jason Kidd or Marshawn, or like, all these guys, Leon Poe. I'm thinking a lot of Berkeley guys right now. They're all Berkeley guys. But just like a lot of people that have come from the Bay, I think, have like a little bit of a different attitude to their game. And I think some of that spirit carries over into soccer as well, because you kind of have to like scrap your way a little bit.
No, facts. I love that. I know we're gonna get into you naming your five-a-side, but talk about obviously you're born and bred Cal Berkeley. Talk about your experience playing at Cal. I know they made a recent announcement with Coach Grimes leaving, but shout out to Coach Griffin. I'm gonna have to get him on the 2 Cents Family Podcast at some point.
Yes.
Talk about your time at Cal, and then obviously get inducted to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I grew up on campus, like, I learned how to ride a bike on campus. Like, if I was sick from school, like, single mom, like, I was going to her school and her students would be kind of looking after me. So um, that
Was
was
there
like,
another option for you? Like, was it
no, like,
always Cal or?
Cal or
oh, to
bust.
go? Well, I was trying to go
Yeah.
out. I wanted to leave because I was like, I grew up here. I need to, like, get out of here. I need to go somewhere else. But like, I didn't even think about writing to UCLA because I was like, there's no chance. And like, like I wrote letters all over the place and nobody wrote back. I sent like videos, and then I just started like showing up at coaches' doorsteps. Like, I went to University of Washington, and I was on a family vacation in Seattle, and I was like, just like, take me to the school. And I just like knocked on the door, and the coach like sat down with me. It was Dean Wurzberger at the time, great guy, but was definitely not really feeling it. I don't know if it was my approach, but he I think he was like interested, but it just didn't work out. And then yeah, I think like it just worked out for me where I went to the Cal camp, and Kevin Grimes, the coach there, was brand new. He had just had his first season, so he hadn't really had time to have like a recruiting class. So he actually brought a bunch of the recruits into the camp, which is like not always like the camps aren't always for like top recruits, right? But I was lucky because a lot of them were there, and I was able to play and show well like against them. And then he was like, "Oh, like, who's this kid from down the street?" So he asked me to like come on a official visit, and I like walked. He's like, "You want me to pick you up?" And I was like, "No, I'll just walk. Like, it's just down like 3 blocks away." But I like stayed at the dorms. I enjoyed it, and I was a part of that first recruiting class where he brought in 12 freshmen, and it was a bunch of guys that were like ended up becoming really good players, like Mike Munoz, Troy Roberts, myself, Noah Merle. There were the next year it was like Tyson Wall. Eventually it was like Steph Fry, but then he started bringing in like Servando Carrasco and Hector Jimenez and Birnbaum and Suarez, and like all these guys that ended up Luke Sassano, guys that have had like AJ Jacobson, like a bunch of really good players.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave somebody off, but I tried to go through a bunch as I could. But
Cool.
yeah, I mean, it was like he really sort of changed the program, and so for me, I think like having grown up here and like the school means so much more to me than just the program, but being a part of like really pushing the program forward from the beginning and then seeing where it's kind of gone is amazing. The cool part that's kind of also happened is, as you mentioned, Leonard Griffin. He was my teammate in Chicago, and we were roommates there for
Wow.
2 years. Yeah, so it was like the way it is. It was like constant UCLA Berkeley, like back and forth, like every day, like. And the worst part was they had won the national championship while he was there, and they'd beat us. Like, we didn't get I think we got to the Sweet 16. So I had like it's the worst roommate ever situation for MLS, right? Especially early, where that's like all you talk about is college.
Yeah.
So it was like, but now I'm like, I got the last laugh because he like came and joined Berkeley, and now is the head coach, and I'm like, I mean, he's got the last laugh too because it's great. It's an incredible opportunity, and like, I know he's going to do a fantastic job, and it's really cool also because I think he's the first Black head coach in men's soccer in Pac-12 history. So like a little bit of piece of history as well too. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see like all those things come together.
No, like you said, it's great, and not only because I remember when you were on the scene at Cal. I was obviously younger, and I mean I wasn't going to go to Cal, but it was just cool to see like you and some of the others that really made a name for themselves, and and it makes sense because you mentioned that you were getting your Australian passport because you had the opportunity to go on trial with Arsenal. And full disclosure, L is like a big Arsenal guy. Can you talk about that experience? Going on trial during college when back then it wasn't really like this wasn't really happening. People
No.
weren't going to European trials. So how did that come about for you? And talk about that experience.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. I had some interest from MLS. Like Dom Kinnear reached out to me when he was at San Jose, and was like talking to me about potentially leaving school early, and it didn't work out for a number of reasons. And like part of it was my mom and I decided, and coach felt like it was good to like finish school and stay at college. And but a part of that also was that I wanted to try to go to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spoke to Kevin Grimes at the time about like, is this possible? Like, is this something we could try and explore? And he was like, yeah, maybe in the summer before your senior year, we can take a look at that. And so he called me one day. I remember I was sitting on my mom's like front steps, and he called me and he was like, okay, we've got like a trial for you set up in Europe. And I was like, oh man, it's amazing. And he's like, it's at Arsenal. And I was like trying to think like, all right, what is there another Arsenal and another, like, is there one in like Belgium or like, I don't know, like somewhere.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, like Arsenal in London. And I was like, oh, damn. All right. So I like immediately went and like started doing like wind sprints. I was out like training. I was fit luckily. And I was playing actually, I think, leading up to that with Orange County Blue Star with like this team that was like Kai Kamara was on it, Sasha Kleshton, Tyson Wall, Dan Kennedy, Jordan Harvey. Like we had so many good, Robbie Rogers. We had so many good players playing. So we were all training. But yeah, I went over to England, and like I just wanted to like see Thierry Henry once. Like I was like, if I just like see him like in the flesh. And the first day I went in, I did this fitness test, and he was like getting treatment, and I just remember being like, oh damn, like that's him. So that happened.
So
The
I'm here.
fitness test that they did was like, I had no guarantees. I think they said it was like going to be like 2 or 3 days maybe. But they were just like, be ready for anything. And the first day they ran me through like a ton of different fitness tests. It was like, 40-yard, like 8 40-yard dashes where they do like sprint endurance. There was like, like a lot of really modern tests, like jumping transfers, like, but this is way a long time ago where like that was not necessarily standard or something I had been exposed to. But I did really well on the tests. And um, when I finished, they were like, oh, wow, like you passed the test, and they're like, show up tomorrow. They're like, you placed near the top like 5% of the club. And so I was like, all right. So I showed up the next day and I was gassed. And I go into training, and my 5v2 group, this is preseason for them. My 5v2 group was Dennis Bergkamp, Sigan, Loren, Jose Reyes, and I can't remember. There was like there's a couple other guys. I think maybe Sol Campbell, and so I was like, oh man, here we go, right? And I remember Reyes megged me 3 times in the 5v2, and like they were like loving it, right? Where I was just like, everyone was just having a great time. And also, I should mention that I was like showing up. I wore like a full Jordan sweatsuit to training, and I had like a headband at the time too. So I like, I was like this American kid showing up. So I was like, oh man, all right, that's a rough start. But then that became my 7-a-side team, and we went to goals, and we won the day, and I scored 2 goals off Dennis Bergkamp assists. And like, I mean, it was like insane, because like you just make a run, and with
he finds you, I bet.
He's like, it just like hit my foot, and I was like, oh, like so I was like walking off the pitch the first day trying to like compute everything that was happening, and I was like, all right, yeah, I got megged like 3 times. That was like not good. And then I was like, wait, like I scored 2 goals off Dennis Bergkamp assists. Like I'm good. Like I'm, and it ended up like turning into, I was there for 2 weeks, and it was just like an incredible experience to be exposed to, like, at the time it was like a historic part of Arsenal's history with they were just like, I think this was like just after the Invincibles season. And it was Patrick Vieira got sold to Juventus while I was there. So I saw him like wave goodbye to everybody and like leave the training ground. And I was like, wow, it's like a part of history. So it was an incredible experience. Like it didn't end up working out. Obviously I was like 20, I think I was 20 at the time, but the second week I spent more time with the reserves, which was like also incredible players. Like Nicholas Bentner was one of the guys that I hung out with a fair amount, which was awesome. But I could just see how much I developed in just those 2 weeks. I felt like I had advanced like 6 months in my development. So I like came back, finished my college season, and then went to MLS. But it was like an incredible moment that like I definitely will never forget.
No, it's amazing, and it's just the testament to how well you did at that young age, and then the experience. I think what I take away is the whole iron sharpens iron thing. Like you mentioned, like all the players from Cal Berkeley that you came up with, OC Blues, where all those guys that are playing pro, and then obviously at Arsenal, to see everything kind of come full circle is really amazing. And then I want to make a quick note, even though I don't want to say this, but shout out to Berkeley, being the first school to hire men's black head coach. It should have been UCLA, but let's not talk about that here. But but yeah, so shout out to Berkeley doing that. And
maybe UCLA can follow Cal's lead, There's still time.
Yeah, most definitely. There's still time. You come back for your senior year, you kill it, and then you end up getting drafted to Chicago. Talk about your time in MLS. Obviously, you made a name in Chicago, but then really blew up in Houston when you guys went to back-to-back finals.
Yeah, I think when I got to the Fire, it was a really good time to arrive. It was like a place that I think a lot of players wanted to go, because it was like you knew the history of what the team had done in those Bob Bradley years and those early Fire days, and there was still a considerable presence from those teams. So I walked into a locker room that had CJ Brown, Zach Thornton, Jim Curtin, Chris Armas, even really talented young players like Chris Rolfe and Nate Jakwa, Chad Barrett, like Leonard Griffin was on the team. We had like Justin Mapp, like some really top players.
Yeah. Legend.
So yeah, everybody lights up when you say Sip, because his game was sick. So it was like a really good time to be there, and we found success. We won the US Open Cup my first year. I think we went to the Eastern Conference semifinal. We then went the next year to Eastern Conference final, lost to New England. That was on the Taylor Twellman bicycle kick. Yeah, that one still burns, but I mean, incredible play. So we had like really good seasons back to back. Then Blanco joined the team. So that was like a whole circus and incredible experience to be a part of. And we had opened up that new stadium in Chicago. So it was like a really good time. Personally, like I kind of broke through and found some success my first year or two, but often in like more of a reserve role, and like trying to find spaces. I think I started my first couple playoff games on the road my second year in Chicago. But yeah, it was tough because like the attitude was a little bit different at the time as far as like young players stepping in. So I remember like I had like 2 assists in the semifinal, or in the to like advance past DC, and then I like didn't play in the next round in the Eastern Conference final. I came on like the last like 5 minutes, and I was like, all right. So it is cool to see how that's changed. Where like now it's like incentivized to play young players. And then I also had some tough luck with injuries. So I loved my time in Chicago, but by the time I left, it was probably, if I'm looking back, it was probably about a year too late. But I was really lucky to get to Houston, and things kind of really clicked for me there with that team.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about? I feel like you might have like the Calen Carr curse because you left Chicago and they kind of struggled. Obviously, shout out to Jamie and Coach Ezra. They're trying to bring it back. You left Houston, and it's been quiet for some time. Hopefully, they're trying to bring it back with their new reinforcements. So, what GM hat on? Would you do to like fix? I don't want to say fix because that's a little bit harsh, but bring Houston back into the limelight, bring Chicago back into the limelight.
I don't know. I think fix is a pretty fair word to say, because I think what it does is it just holds them to the standard that I think they want to get back to. And I feel okay saying it because I still love those clubs, and I'm definitely like pulling for them. And like you said, I really like the direction that both of them have made as far as the changes that they've made in the front office, and even in ownership, which I think is going to be huge. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to say like that it was like I left the team and it all crumbled, which is far from the truth. But I think the real issue is like it's difficult. I think it's difficult to have that success over time, and like I think you've seen that across, especially a lot of the earlier teams that came through. Only until recently did we see New England kind of find their way back. DC has had struggles compared to what their standard was at the beginning. LA even has gone through some lean times, which is like unthinkable, really, from the MLS that I knew, where I was like, they just beat everybody in finals. And the idea that they wouldn't make the playoffs is crazy. So I feel okay about rubbing that one in, but I think like for Chicago, it felt like they lost their way a little bit with holding on to the right guys and kind of like what had worked amongst the team. I felt like some of the choices, like around 2010, Dennis Hamlet left, and it was like a number of changes started happening, and it started being like Justin Mapp, Chris Rolfe, Gonzalo Cigares, a bunch of guys start going, and you start looking around the locker room, and you're like, oh, I think I might need to go too. So I think it can kind of like just slip away very easily. And I think for Houston, Dom Kinnear had such a big impact on that club, and just like what he was able to do as far as building the team. And like I mentioned that I knew him since I was young, but he was successful in San Jose. Like when I came to the team, he knew me since I was a kid, but I still heard that he was like calling John Conway, who was in my locker room on the team, to ask me how I was training at the time and like what my mentality was like. And so like for a guy that he knew super well, he was still like doing his research to figure out exactly like what type of guy I was like this week. And so I think like that relationship also, and that trust, and just being around good guys in those Houston locker rooms. Like Brian Ching called me before I, even got to Houston, just like the captain calling and being like someone of Brian's stature to be like, hey, if you need a place to, yeah, well, I don't think he offered me a place to stay, but I think he was like, you can stay in the hotel, but if you need some help finding a place,
a couple hotels.
yeah, I'll help you out. But all those guys, Bobby Boswell, just all these guys that were just like really great guys in the locker room. And in MLS the margins are small, and so I think like we were able to win a lot of games, especially when it came down to the playoffs, partly due to those like small margins and those little differences between our group. And I think if you lose sight of that, that can be a struggle. I even look at like Cincinnati now, and like I know they just won 3 games in a row. I don't want to like go crazy with that, but like I look at that coaching staff and Dom's on there and Noonan and some of those guys, and I'm like, it just makes sense to me that they would like kind of start to figure it out and like simplify things and build some structure and some continuity around it. And like, still takes time to find those pieces, but I don't think it can be understated to like figure out how to like kind of create a culture, like a locker room.
No, I'm so glad you said that because it's easy to say it from here, but like this formula is really easy. It's been proven. Obviously, people are trying to change it, but like the formula is right here, and you see the teams that are successful and they're doing it the right way. So why not keep it like that?
Look at Seattle, right?
Exactly.
Like Seattle has all the talent. They have the DPs. They have like the 16-year-old Vargas comes in the CCL final I was at last week, and like they're doing the youth development thing. But I think the thing that like really separates them is that kind of like that mixture of guys and how they're able to kind of like stick together and really kind of compete with each other. So because that's like what it comes down to in like the finals or as you go through tournaments and stuff.
No, exactly. So, you do a lot of stuff with MLS and, different organizations from a mentorship side as well. Can you talk about your career from the standpoint of like overcoming injuries and like the mental fortitude that you needed to continue to play? Because it's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah, no, I think, going back to your first question on like just like loving the game, like I feel like if you don't like really love the game and it's just a job, I know some guys can kind of like fight through that, but for me personally, like if I didn't love it, I would have like quit a bunch of times. Not just like from like showing up at college coaches doorsteps, that those were like easy disappointments, like going through like 2 ACL surgeries and like a 4.5 month concussion, and then like cleanups on my knees, or like tearing my ACL in MLS Cup, like all these kind of like big blows that are tough to take. And like if you don't really love what you're doing, I would also add I wasn't like getting paid $1 billion or anything like that, so like it really wasn't about the check. I mean, I feel like this 2 Cents podcast name is like like what some of the MLS salaries started at a long time ago. So it's just like I think for me, like coming through some of that goes back to just like those early days for me of like loving the game. And then also I felt lucky in a way when I got to MLS because I had been through some disappointments and I had like been through some adversity. And so it wasn't like a huge shock to me when I would get dropped or when I would I think I learned how to handle it better, where I learned how to like advocate for myself or like kind of like defend myself on the pitch or stand up for like what I felt I deserved. But yeah, the disappointment part is like and the injuries especially, like just as I was able to kind of get going, it felt like a lot of times I would like face some big injury and then it was like you got to climb all the way back. So I felt a lot of my time was kind of felt like I was like trying to get back and then enjoying, but I like really appreciated those times, especially like late on in Houston. Like to have the best time of your career near the end is very rare. Like I look at guys who still like find success late on in MLS, and I'm like, they know like they're like appreciating it, and like so I feel like for me to feel on like there's this like I feel like there's this point where your physical abilities maybe diminish a little bit and your mental abilities like kind of begin to match it, and you can kind of hover for a little while. And that's like a really nice sweet spot to be at. And I felt like in Houston, that was kind of like what I found for myself.
No, most definitely. Obviously, condolences for the injuries that you had to deal with, but you definitely bounced back. And not to say that the workers' comp is equal, but hopefully you got compensated.
Well, I gotta ask you,
in
because
that
like
aspect.
you. But what about you, Amobi? Like finding, like, as time has gone on, like, did you feel like you appreciated it more, or like, or that like love was still there, or like how did you kind of maintain that or nurture that?
No, that's a great point. I think because like when you come into the league, you're like, yo, you don't even think about like the politics at hand, like the fact that it's a job. You're just like, yeah, you get to play soccer with your boys and compete. And then like there's a certain period where it's like you get into that stage where it's like, all right, no, I need to get paid and compensated for my worth. I need, like, everything starts to get into that business aspect. And I think there's like an inflection point where you're just like, F it. Like, yo, I'm playing soccer, I'm getting paid, and I'm at the ability where my physical, like you said, matches and hovers around my mental, where the game's like slower for you. Like off season, you're not rushing to do whatever the trainer gives you because you have your own rhythm. And then like that's the perfect spot to be at in your career where it's not like, I'm not saying you don't give a crap about but you're free in how you go about and operate. Um, from a professional standpoint. And I was
Yeah,
fortunate enough to, go through that stage or have that stage because a lot of times people don't get to that point where, because they're either like so dialed in and it affects them, or they're just so, by the time they even realize what it is, they're already out the league. So I think you brought up a great point. And yeah, I would say those are like the three stages of how, at least from my standpoint, soccer kind of goes.
yeah, that makes sense.
Huh. So that's a good question. I thought we were supposed to give you the question, but that was a good one. You put it back on
Flip the
me with
script
that
on
one.
him. Put the
Caught me off
media hat
guard with
on.
the yeah. But you had a long career. What were some of your favorite memories? As a player. For some of the historic teams that you played on, some great cities. A lot of good moments in your career.
Yeah, I mean, I will. The only trophy that I won was my rookie year in Chicago. And it's funny because like they tell you to appreciate it, and you're
Yeah.
like, because you don't know if you're gonna get it again. And like, so I think winning the Open Cup my rookie year was big. I think also like, I scored like 4 or 5 goals in the tournament, and that was like my first chance to really like kind of claim my place or prove that I could play. To go back to it though, I did score to take issue. I did score 2 goals against DC again in the semifinal, and I didn't play in the Open Cup final. So it's like,
That's crazy.
anyways, it's a whole other
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But
I feel your
uh,
pain on that one.
yeah,
That happened to me.
that
I
was
scored in the semis, and then yeah,
really.
that's crazy. Yeah,
Dang, man. All right, we're in this together. I mean,
yeah.
I
But at
feel
least y'all
bad
won
for
it.
you, but it makes me
At
feel a
least
little,
y'all won
yeah.
it. We lost it. So
Oh,
Philly has a
shoot.
curse until they,
Yeah,
make amendments.
that's right. Yeah. Send a Moby that Open Cup bonus check when it comes in. uh, but yeah, so that was big. I think for me, like, all the playoff runs with uh, Houston, going to finals. The last one I kind of mentioned, but it was like a real roller coaster of a match for me, from going from scoring a goal just before halftime. This was like, we had lost the year before in 2011 to the Galaxy. We lost 1-0. Landon scored a nice goal in the second half. And we didn't really feel like we played very well. I don't think LA played very well either, but they just like had the, found the moment, and that Landon, of course, is known to do that.
Hmm.
And the next year, I just remember coming in and feeling like we were just, what's the worst that could happen? Like, I knew how bad it was to lose to this team in the same stadium like a year before. So
Yeah.
I think it kind of like, we didn't do any of the like, before there was like parties and like ownership dinners and stuff like that. I think like, it was funny. I think like Oscar De La Hoya was a minority owner at the time, and he like asked to come speak to the locker room before the game, and we were like, nah, we're good. We had like, we're like, we've never met you, like, so it's just like,
get out of here with that.
But that was like the personality of our team, like we just had that kind of personality, and we're going against the Galaxy, which had like Landon and Robbie Keane. It was Beckham's last game, and I just like remember driving to the stadium and feeling like, let's like just this is what you work for your whole life. How often do you get a second crack at this? And we played really well. I scored just before halftime. Adam Moffett played me like a really nice ball in behind, and I was able to put it away. And like the whole crowd went quiet, and we were winning 1-0 at halftime. And I was like, it was Beckham's last game again, so I was like, oh man, like we might really flip the script. And then like second half, I actually went into a challenge with Omar Gonzalez, and like I actually tried to foul him in a way. I was like going in behind. It was ill-timed, and I just like extended and got caught in the ground at the wrong time and tore my ACL. So it's like, and within 10 minutes, they scored 2 goals. So I was like still on the sideline trying to figure out what had just happened. And it was just like goal. And then they scored a third. So it was like a mixture of like, I say a lot of people have like highs and lows in a career. Like I feel like mine happened in the span of like an hour. But yeah, I mean, like, that was kind of what I think that's the real story of like being a pro, is like, it's not just highs, it's not just lows, like it's kind of all of that. And for me, it was kind of encapsulating that game. But I think like, I've taken away so much from my career, and as far as like friendships or memories, and like, just really amazing experiences. Cause like I said, I wasn't really necessarily expecting to get that far. I think all of us wish I would have signed in Europe, or I wish I would have. You get close to it, you see friends who play in a World Cup, but I think over time you just learn to kind of like really feel grateful for the experiences and the success that you had. And so, that's kind of where I'm at.
No, that's facts on that. I think that's really important. There's only so many people that can make it pro and to play at an elite level. 3 finals, yeah. It really puts it all into perspective. What advice would you have, for individuals looking to go pro? You've been through it. I would say like MLS 2.0. I think we're like in MLS 3.5 now. What advice would you have, for young individuals, especially those of color, looking to go pro?
Well, it's cool. I mean, as far as that goes, like I feel like there's so many more examples now. Whereas like I know you guys just had Kobe on, and I remember like I wore number 13 my whole career or like leading up to the pros, because Kobe Jones was like my hero. When I got to the pros, I like couldn't get 13, so I switched to number 3, which was like my I know, which was weird, right? I'm supposed to be, so I was like just silently like begging for someone to convert me to an outside back and extend my career, I think already. But I think that piece is important. And like, just from being around and how much the league has changed since I've left, even, I feel like there's always been like, huge impact as far as from like the Black and Latino community. And sometimes those cross over in MLS. And I think like that's always been really important. But just seeing and being a part of like, doing some documenting around what BPC has done, and like the way the guys have organized as of late has been incredible. So I think that alone is like going to take things and push things forward. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's good. Like that, I think there's been a cultural shift too, as far as just playing young players. And so like those stories of being like, oh, I felt like I could have got more. I mean, those are like, always stories and always going to be stories for people. But, and sometimes they're fair. Not in our cases, of course, but I think like for the young guys, like they're getting their opportunities now. And I think MLS is understanding that like beyond just like sometimes these players being ready and deserving it, like there's a financial component to it, as far as being able to sell these guys abroad and then see them go on and having incredible careers abroad. And we're seeing that with the national team now too, and even some domestic guys that like Jesus Ferreira and stuff that are deciding to stay and doing awesome too. So it's cool to see kind of how those things are all shifting.
No, it's great. I love how you put it to perspective. Like, obviously, there's a bigger incentive to play younger guys, but even back then, younger guys were playing. Not to say that everyone had a fair shake, but to see more guys get fair shakes now, it really is good to see. And like you said, we don't want to be bitter about it, but definitely have to acknowledge it. Yeah.
Yes.
So for so for you, obviously you ended up stepping away from the game. How did that transition, into the media space work? Was it something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I was always interested in it. Like even from when I was young, like I like wrote for our my like high school newspaper. I went to Berkeley and I knew like right away I wanted to major in media studies, so I did that. And then like I was always just a really willing participant when I was playing to do interviews. Even I remember like playing in Champions League games. I was telling a story to somebody at the Champions League final of like playing in Panama City, and some of the Spanish speaking guys on the team didn't want to do interviews, and
Yeah.
our like club PR guy in Houston was like, hey, can like anybody, Calen, like, would you mind, like, you speak a little bit of Spanish, would you mind doing this like Panama TV like hit? And I was like, yeah, I don't know anybody in Panama, like nobody's gonna see this, so I might as well give it a try.
Yeah.
And so like, I was just always really open to it. And then that last year when I did my knee in the final, actually Sebastian Salazar, who's now at ESPN, he was the reporter for the team for CSN Houston at the time, and so he started inviting me on their like studio programming, or I would like shadow him in the office. Then I started actually doing like sideline hits before our games, and it was kind of awkward because I was
So,
rehabbing and like in the film session, so it was like it actually really helped to be able to like be brand new and know exactly like what the tactics were and the matchups that we were looking to exploit. So I had to kind of like play it a little bit close to the vest at times, and um, but that was like the first time that I got a little bit of a peek to say like, oh, I think I really like this. Like I really like the pressure of like, and even for just mentally, rehabbing is grueling. So like just feeling like I had a purpose on game day and like putting on a suit and tie and going to the match and like being a part of that broadcast was really fun. So but after that, I like moved back to the Bay Area. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I started a couple, like, I was trying everything. I started a couple creative projects. I got back to writing. I started a fashion soccer clothing project called Future Collective, with a couple friends. Like
you still got that,
I
by the way?
was, it's on hiatus right now, I would say. Yeah,
That was fire, by the way.
thank you. Yeah, Warren Craval, he was one of our original models, and then he got too expensive, so we had to shut the business down. So it was tough.
Shout
And
out
now
to Warren.
he picked up the baton. He'd been doing it before, but he's been running with it. I loved his episode, by the way, on 2 Cents. Check that out if you're listening after this one.
Shout out
Yeah, it
Calen,
was
true supporter.
hey man, got a rep. He sometimes sends me a free T-shirt, so I gotta keep my keep in good graces. Yeah, I was trying to figure it out, and then actually I was really lucky because this guy Michael Milberger, who was working at MLS at the time and was like leading their video team, just sent me a message on Twitter and was like, "Hey, I saw you wrote an article for Howler magazine," because I just started like writing some stuff and sending it in, and they were cool with putting a couple articles up. And he was like, "Would you ever want to try doing some on camera work?" Which, like, meanwhile, I was like desperately trying to find and couldn't
Yeah.
find any. But I like played it cool and was like, "Yeah, they like, I'll be interested. I'll be open to that." And like the first hit I did was with Mehdi Bellucci, who I'd known super well and was like scoring goals for NYCFC. So that was really comfortable. And then the next one was at the Steve Nash Showdown, and I had like just been at like Stu Holden's like bachelor party with like him and Nash and Jay Demerit and all these guys. So it was like they were all playing, so it was very easy to kind of just like talk to them. So I had like a very soft landing into kind of the media side of things from MLS, and then decided to move there full time, and then kind of like began to develop some different shows and really kind of like explore some different terrain, and kind of kept it running from there.
No, love that. I feel like obviously people knew about you, but I feel like you really broke onto the scene with the movement. So can you talk about how that came about and kind of the creative concept and direction of, bringing that to life.
Yeah, it was well, thank you. But yeah, it was like one of those things where Rachel Bonetta had been at MLS and had a show there called Get Me In There, where she was like going in the supporters groups and hanging out with the fans and like having like basically partying with them and having a good time. And
Yeah.
we were like, we can't do that because one, Rachel's amazing and I could never imitate her. Two, like being in the crowd, real hardcore, like behind the supporters groups was not really my vibe. And so we were like, this guy Michael Milberger I mentioned was like, what would be interesting, or like how can we really kind of think about what would be interesting to you? And the thing for me, I think, kind of going back to my backstory and how I grew up and where I grew up, and then of course, like you guys know, being in locker rooms is like the amount of people you meet and the different backstories that they have too that are incredibly interesting. So, Brian Ching was we went to Hawaii with him and was like went to the North Shore, this little like town where he grew up on the North Shore, and went surfing and was talking about like how surfing and soccer worked on his balance and how he was like the only Hawaiian ever to make a World Cup team on the men's side. Or like Marlon Hairston, who I know you guys had on. I went to Jackson with him and looked at how him and Marcus Epps and all these guys had come through Central Jackson, and like Justin Mapp also was there and came into town. I was like, how is this like town that's not known for soccer, right? It's more like football, American football and basketball. Like, how are these guys coming up? And it was like, you end up finding that a lot of these guys were coached by Caribbean guys that had moved there. Same thing with like Brampton, where I was like, how are all these guys coming out of Brampton? I kept hearing like Jonathan Osorio talking about it. I was like, Kyle Laren, like all these guys had come out of there. And I was like, and on the women's side too. And so we started kind of like exploring a lot of these different concepts. We went to so I think that was like it just really kind of came out of like an interest from being in the locker rooms and then trying to understand more of the backstory, or like see if we could take people into them. And then it kind of evolved over time to talking maybe less about like individual stories and looking more at some issues and I think that was partly just based on like what was happening in the world at the time with like who was president and all the different things of just like the tenor of the country at the time. And so we went to places like I spent time with guys from LAFC during Ramadan. We went to the border at like RGV, and we went to El Paso again. So we looked at some immigration issues. We did some stuff in Minnesota with Colin Martin, looked at like LGBTQ issues as well. So it was like, it became really like a cool show that started to evolve in different ways. And so I feel like soccer is just like kind of natural terrain for those types of topics, just because of the like the clientele that's a part of it and just how open and like global it is. So yeah, it was an awesome time. I definitely loved making that show.
No, and now you killed it with that. That was definitely inspirational for me, as I'm transitioning 2Cents FC into that creative content space. The movement is definitely one of the shows that I like looked at and kind of try to see how things are structured and like pulling ideas from and stuff like that. So definitely gonna tap in with you after the show.
Cool. That's great to hear. Thank you. Yeah, let's do it.
But you mentioned this earlier. You were up in Seattle for the CCL final. What was the energy like around that? Seattle being the first MLS team in the modern, CCL Champions League era to win one. Like, what was the energy like around that game?
It was amazing. I just got it there on game day, so I took like a 7 a.m. flight from New York. But like the second I landed, and that's the crazy thing about Seattle is like, even if it's just like a normal league game, like not every MLS city you walk around on game day and it's a match. Like Seattle, you always know it's a match. And but this definitely had like a little bit of a different energy. I just think because of the stakes involved. And then Pumas also brought up like a pretty legit crowd to the match too. So it added like this whole different dynamic to it. It was all like really friendly and cool. People were showing love to each other, but it was yeah, it was cool. And I just like, you could feel the opportunity as well, just as far as feeling like not like always so nervous in the sense that this team had the quality to win and like really kind of get over that hump. The first half made me nervous watching it just in the crowd because I was like, oh, Nuhu goes down, and then it was João Paulo goes down, and like Pumas was playing well and had a lot of the ball, and then that goal happened right before halftime, and like the stadium just erupted. Like it was just yeah, I mean, there's no roof on the stadium, but it felt like the place like erupted and like the top blew off. And then it was, I just love any final when somebody scores like an insurance goal. Like there's just nothing better than that in a final. Like I always think back to like 1998, and I think it was Emmanuel Petit scores like the breakaway. It's like a left back just like trying to get forward to get his and like gets on the score sheet. Uh, and I just like, so yeah, it was like a really incredible atmosphere, and like, it feels fitting in a way that it was Seattle. I have some friends that played for Brian Schmetzer before they went into MLS, and just even talking to them about what he was like as a manager, and then seeing what he's done with this team. I mentioned kind of my perspective on coaching before, but he seems like the type of coach I would want to play for, and you just see how the team responds. So yeah, and then it's cool just to think like they're gonna have a Jimi Hendrix jersey rocking at the Club World Cup. Like that's progress. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. It's fire. Definitely was dope to see that, and it was just fitting that it was Seattle. Like it just made all the sense in the world that it would be Seattle. Like they've proven time and time again that they're the like the marquee club in terms of like doing it right. From the youth all the way up. So definitely, congratulations to them. So as you kind of transitioned into media, you've done the movement, so you've been traveling around for that. Also doing, sideline commentating and stuff like that. So what are some of the wildest stories, or what's like one crazy story that you could share from your media days?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say at MLS Cup in 2018, there was it was Atlanta hosting against Portland, and I was on the jumbotron before game and halftime with Susanna Collins, who I work with at MLS, and it's that 360 video board, so it's like kind of crazy to be up there, and the stadium is so loud that it's like really hard to hear, and we had this like audio equipment as well where you're like supposed to be able to hear yourself. I get out there at halftime and like I can't hear a thing. And like I can't even really hear. I'm supposed to get Susanna's volume through my like earpiece to be able to talk to her, and like that was out, so I start just trying to like inch closer to hers just so I can hear what she has to say. So I like kind of went through that whole thing just without being able to hear anything. So that was kind of crazy. That's the first one that pops up. But I think also just more than anything, like just after playing in MLS for a while and not always being in environments like that, like when I go to Seattle or when I go to Atlanta and I see kind of what's happening from like the support side of things, or you go to like LAFC or you go to some of these newer clubs and you see how crazy packed it is. I haven't been to Nashville yet. I'd like to check that out, or Cincinnati. I haven't been since their new stadium, but just like sometimes I do kind of like trip out a little bit because um, it's just cool to still be involved and like to still be a part of the game growing. And I think to like bring your own, just to be involved is cool. I think to bring your own unique perspective or to get to do more storytelling stuff is more what I'm drawn to. But just being around the atmosphere and then also seeing the growth of the game here has been definitely pretty incredible to see.
Especially, well, that's a good transition actually into a new podcast that you have, 94 to Infinity. So can you tell us about that, like how it came about, with what it's about?
Yeah, I it came about because so like once COVID hit, the movement show, like doing a travel documentary soccer show, was going to be very difficult. So we've immediately flipped that into a podcast, and I was at my girlfriend's parents' house at the time in Atlanta, and that's when like actually Ray Gaddis hit me up at first and was like, "Hey, I'm in Indianapolis. I've been going to these protests. Um, like, do you want to do like a movement episode, or like how do we get this story out there?" And I was like, I've gotten to know Ray for a while. I mean, playing against Amobi, I know you guys were teammates, and just like he's just somebody that I have a ton of respect for, um, and like regardless if any players ever hit me up, I always want to support. But I think especially Ray. But I couldn't get to Indianapolis, so I was like, maybe we could do an audio interview, and then I started talking to Warren, and then Jeremy Abobasi, and Iko Para, and a bunch of guys that were having similar experiences. And that this was like kind of as BPC seemed to be forming. So then the bubble happened, so we started tracking that story. So we ended up like releasing a movement podcast version of that, and we did only 2 episodes. And then I moved to freelance from MLS, and I was like really kind of like craving, like searching for like what's going to be my creative outlet. And I think for a while I was like hoping that someone was just going to kind of like be like, hey, I like what you do, like come over here and do something like that. And it just kind of goes back to like the same things that I found as a player, like when I was coming up, as I was mentioning. It's just like it doesn't always work like that. So like I did a piece for Vice News Tonight that was on TV. That was cool. On like it was the first or one of the only Native American tribes in the US that was taking part in the COVID vaccine trials. And so I like researched and reported that and went up to Washington to do that. So I was like getting to do some things outside of soccer, which was like really cool to kind of stretch into. But I also still missed doing soccer stories. And so I got on the phone with 2 of my old collaborators, Michael Milberger, I keep mentioning, um, executive produced the movement at MLS, and then this guy, Nick Furshaw, who's like an excellent writer and longtime like MLS personality and great audio engineer. And so we were like, why don't we just like make something together? So we kind of started there, and then we're like, what do we want to talk about? And I think the biggest story that we wanted to tackle first off was the Qatar World Cup, just it being a World Cup year and like a very unusual one, with it being one in Qatar, with the way that process went, with them basically buying the World Cup, and then all the like scandalous stuff as far as their like treatment of migrant workers and the deaths that have happened there. So heavier topic for sure, but I think by now we tend to like to go towards those. And I think a big story that people were just people have been talking about for a long time, but I think was like coming into consciousness more because it was a World Cup year and the U.S. was getting set to qualify. So we titled the first episode "How to Watch the World Cup in Qatar Without Completely Hating Yourself," which was actually like a text message that we were like sending back and forth to each other, just like actually trying to figure it out. I don't think we actually answered the question, even though that's the title of the podcast. We ended up, I interviewed Zito Madu, who's like incredible writer, former player. I'm sure you guys have probably crossed paths with at some point, or if not, you guys should have him on the show. But yeah, we didn't really answer the question, but we wrestled with it. And I think like that's kind of like, I guess the big takeaway for me from it was like, that is something we should wrestle with. We shouldn't pretend like it's not happening, and like you can still be excited. I'm hyped for the World Cup, and like especially with this team and the talent that we have. So it's like it's a little bit of both for me. But yeah, now I guess the task is to try and figure out what episode 2 is going to be next.
Yeah, I was just about to ask like when's the next one dropping, because the first one was dope.
Yeah, well, we took like a challenging approach to it, as far as like um we like brought in some different audio elements and news clips, and we did a bunch of research and um, a lot of editing. So it's a little bit of a different kind of podcast. So it won't be all the time, but I think we're trying to release them like every month or so, every month or two. It's been a little while since episode 1, but we've got a concept for episode 2 that we're still fleshing out, but I think it's probably going to still be looking at the World Cup and maybe more related around like fan culture, specifically as it relates to like the US and Mexico, and like what it might be, how these 2 cultures are kind of like either blending or having to kind of like reflect on themselves, and also um, still interested in like how do you be a fan of this World Cup, and what does that look like?
Another move that you've made recently, you've joined up with For Soccer Ventures. I believe you're working with Black Star, right?
Yep.
So tell us about what your role there and what you'll be doing with them.
Yeah, so I've actually been hearing about them for a long time, and like I know a lot of people who had worked there, and kind of like I feel like they've been making some noise for a little while now, and actually, I know Amobi's involved, and Warren Kravaz, who I brought up before, was involved before, and the opportunity kind of came up to begin to work with them, and so I joined as like a creative lead there and helping kind of across the different things that they do. So there's like Black Star program, which is looking at growing the game in Black communities. There's Alianza, which is in like it's one of the biggest tournaments um, it used to be just in the West Coast predominantly, but now it's all over the U.S. and it's looking at like I mean, they've been really famous and successful at getting players that are from like Latin communities who are maybe not being scouted traditionally and kind of giving them opportunities at first, I think, with a lot with like Mexican teams. And now I know all the MLS teams are scouting them as well. So there's definitely that like on field component, but then also we're developing some cool concepts like FootyCon, which is going to be like a Comic Con or like for footy, but it's like a soccer culture festival. So that's something that I just think is like, hits a lot of the things that I'm interested in so far in my career, but it's in definitely a very different format. So I think that part is challenging for me and interesting and exciting. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far.
Dope. Yeah, excited to see what happens with FootyCon. I know it was virtual last year, so hopefully we can get some in-person stuff and
that's the plan.
Tell your people to make sure 2Cents is on the list somewhere, somehow,
of
some way.
Of course.
Are there any other endeavors that you're working on? Any like entrepreneurial work or anything that's hasn't been surfaced just yet, but still cooking up?
No, that's it. I got my hands are full right now. Like just kind of taking on these new challenges. I mean, I think the ones that I'm working on are like really creatively fulfilling for me. And yeah, I don't know. I think one thing that I like learned from the past couple years is like just I don't know, not to take things for granted. So I try to come back here and be around family as much as I can and reconnect with old friends. Like I went to um, an old friend, this guy, Yasko. His artist name is Sko Habibi. I'm wearing a shirt actually right here. And he was an artist in residence for the Oakland Roots. And he just opened. I used to play pickup soccer with him in Berkeley when I was a kid, and he was a little bit older, but would always like meg me. And he's like gone on to be this like incredible, not just like creative player on the pitch, but like his art is amazing. And he just opened up a gallery studio space. So I was like over there yesterday checking out his stuff, and like I'm just always found myself in interesting conversations with people. We were like the topic yesterday was more around like youth development and how like we've kids don't dribble anymore. I feel like we've gotten so much into this idea of like passing and rondos and like trying to replicate that, which is like great and amazing, but also it's like I don't know. I remember seeing like Gio Reyna make that run against Mexico, and you're like, oh, what was that? And we were talking about seeing like how often do you see those types of players come out anymore, and like a part of that is because like I don't know if kids are really taught to dribble or like allowed to dribble all the time. So, anyways, this is like a total tangent, but like I like to find ways and hang out with people that are kind of like right at that middle of like, on the field, off the field, and like kind of looking at things from different perspectives.
It still definitely helps keep the brain fresh. And
yeah. Keep dribbling, right?
Yeah.
Facts.
That's a t-shirt. All right, so let's jump into some rapid fire questions, just some little fun questions that we like to run across people. What is one interesting fact about yourself that most people wouldn't know?
Oh man, I think I already gave everything away. I've got nothing left. Yeah, I don't know. I guess. Well, I think I gave it away. I took that ballet class. That was like, not a lot of people would know that. I only went to like one or two classes, and I was like not happy about it because I was like, I think I was embarrassed because I was like the only boy in the class. But I don't know. I appreciate also that my mom would like push me into different things and see if I like it. So yeah, that will be it for today.
Okay. So what's on your pre-match playlist?
Ooh, well, men's league right now, it's like, I can't get too hyped for men's league. You don't want to go into that thing too hot because you end up like getting injured. And I've had enough of that. I think like as I was playing, I don't know. I was like, so I played in Chicago in, 05, 06 to 2011. So that was like all Kanye, like it was everywhere you went, like in the streets. I was watching the documentary of his recently, and I just was like reflecting on living there at sort of an amazing time where like it was like his second album. And he just like, I think it was was it late registration or graduation?
Late registration.
Yeah, late registration. Yeah. So like that was everywhere from like, if you had a night out, if you were just on the street, everywhere. And then also it was the same time that Obama got elected. So I was there in 08 when and I went like, I was on crutches, I remember. And I went to Grant Park to see his speech that night with Dason Robinson, who was a teammate of mine there. So like it was just a historic time. So I'd say Kanye was like everything in that like pregame side of things in Chicago, and a little Lupe and some other like artists there, and then Houston. I think I was all on like at that time it was like all Watch the Throne, and then also I remember driving a lot to some Frank Ocean, like the like early, like I think it was like that mixtape.
Nostalgia.
Was it like Nostalgia Ultra? Yeah.
Dope. So like, so your pregame vibe seems like to be a little bit more chilled and
just calm.
Yeah.
Than most people.
Yeah, like even in like the huddle, like when guys would be like, coming in, getting real hyped, I'd be kind of like on the outside, just like kind of looking up at the crowd. Like I didn't want to go, I couldn't go all the way in as far as getting too excited because I found like I would lose my energy, or you figure out what's your best energy going into a game. And I was ready to compete for sure, but I was not trying to like, I'm too skinny. I didn't have the muscle to back it up if I was like gonna really get too crazy.
All right. So you work like crazy, definitely busy times. What's your favorite off work activity?
I think coming back here to Berkeley and just like reconnecting with friends and family, hanging out with my mom. We're still super tight. In Brooklyn, like just kind of like walking to the park. I live near like sort of in between Fort Greene Park and Prospect Park, so there's some really nice parks there. And my girlfriend and I just kind of like enjoy just kind of taking in everything that New York has to offer. And there's so much like interesting culture happening in New York that you can just kind of like stumble into it, where you just end up like having a conversation with someone at a restaurant, and you know you end up just like learning something different or meeting somebody incredible. Or you can walk into like a comedy show and like anybody could show up, you just never know. So I saw Z-Way actually like before the pandemic, and I was like, she has blown up and gotten her show there, but just like I didn't plan on going to see her or people like that. So there's just a lot of interesting things happening in New York, and I wouldn't say I have like the backstage pass to all that, because that kind of disappears sometimes when you stop playing. But I try to find my way to like stumble into whatever I can.
Yeah, for sure. So you've lived in a couple cities. What's the first thing you do when you move to a new city outside of finding a place to live? Like, what's the first thing you got to do?
Well, when I moved to Houston, I tried to take the bus, which was a mistake because nobody like really takes the bus there. Everybody drives, and I didn't have a car, right. So I took a bus to go look at an apartment, and the blocks there are like, it's like 100 degrees, right? So I was like sweating immediately. I didn't find the apartment, and then like even the ATM, I needed to get some cash to try and get a cab or something like that, because this was like 2011, 2012. And there was just like I was waiting behind a car in line to get an ATM. So I had like a pretty bad start when I got to Houston. I ended up finding like a good scene in Midtown in Montrose where you can like there's good restaurants and things like that. But I would say like I always try and find a cafe, just like a good place to go that you can. My spot in Houston was this place called Brazil Cafe, and yeah, maybe it was my love for Brazil, but it reminded me of Berkeley in a way because it was like an old wooden kind of place with yeah, they would have like I don't know, it was very like Berkeley vibes. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah, that was kind of my spot in Houston. And you know, now in Brooklyn, there's like too many coffee shops, but you really only need one or two, and I only go to like one or two in Brooklyn, anyways.
Yeah, for sure. Once you find that one spot, you gotta commit.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite away city? We talked about, you know, moving to new cities, but like as you're playing, you visit different cities. What's the favorite away city?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say I might say Toronto. Yeah, I've had a really good time every time I've gone to Toronto, and like I've been a bunch like to cover games now, some really cold ones, but like summertime, it's like really nice. And yeah, if you have some people there that can kind of show you around, it's like it reminds me of Chicago in a little bit, but maybe even more like international as far as like the like culture and energy of the city. So if I had to pick right now, I'd probably give it up to Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto's always high on the list when we ask that question.
Are you gonna ask me the worst next? I gotta be careful. Okay.
Nah.
Toronto definitely top 3. Chicago's up there as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things we like to do is, especially with the regions, we got these region wars kind of going on. You know, DMV, SoCal, you know, LA. We always like to ask who's on your 5-a-side. So who's on your Bay Area / I'll give you NorCal. Who's on your NorCal 5-a-side?
Oh wow. Okay, so I gotta stick to the Bay. That's cool. I can do that. I gotta take Wando for sure. I need Steph Fry in goal because, I mean, you see it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Mehdi Bellucci for sure because Mehdi was sick. Like he was insane.
Yeah.
Like especially if you're playing 5-a-side and like any pickup, he was like Ronaldinho to me. I was like playing pickup in the Bay in the off seasons. It was so fun to play with him. So that's 3. I got to pick myself. Like I know Wando's playing up top, so I probably have to slide a little bit wide, maybe do some more of the defensive work. But I'm good with that. I got Mehdi as like my creator. I'm trying to build a real team here. I got my goalkeeper. I need a defender. I need a back. So I think so is this? These are like from the Bay. They can't just like have like pass through Berkeley. Okay.
510 area code.
All right.
I mean, I'll give you the entire Bay. You can go from San Francisco, South Bay, East Bay.
Yeah. I'll go with Steve Purdy. I don't. He played.
Oh yeah. Good shout.
I'll go with Purdy. He was like he could definitely ball. And then I'm gonna go with there's some good ones like I got Quincy, but I already have a striker. I need.
Wait, you counting Quincy as the Bay Area?
He's not from David.
Nah,
I thought
he's from like Bakersfield.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Shoot. Okay. All right. Never mind. He's out.
Yeah. Oh, like, wait, hold up.
I feel like I didn't know. I mean, he's younger, so I didn't know him till Davis. So I assumed that he was from somewhere around here. And then I'm going to Amobi. Come on. We got to do it.
Do I count as
yeah.
I said NorCal.
No, I count.
You said NorCal.
I'm counting SAC before I'm counting all of the South Bay. Like I go up to SAC a lot. I got people there. So yeah.
Respect.
That's the first time Amobi made it into a 5-a-side.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Well, technically, this is the first time we had someone from NorCal to do a
You got to tap into that network a little bit more.
Yeah, scouts.
But Amobi, you got to defend for all of it. You got to defend for all of us, though.
That's not a problem,
Okay.
Last line of defense. Y'all will get the goals.
All right, good.
All right, and real quick before we jump into trending topics, you're eligible. So back when you were playing, you're eligible to play for U.S. or Australia. Which national team would you pick?
Oh, well, I mean the U.S., but I feel like I regret not actually like trying to make more of a play to see if I could get like a look with Australia at some point. Now, they've also like qualified for every World Cup. I think so. It's like it's not easy to get in at the time. I think most of their guys were playing in Europe, and I think also the perception of MLS was maybe not where it is right now. But I mean, I would say either because like playing for the U.S. would be an incredible dream. Like, and any of these guys that I know that we all know that have played there, I've always been like, just so in awe of like what that would be like. But like I think based on my like cultural and history being Aboriginal Australian, like I feel like to have had an opportunity to represent the national team there too, even though I didn't like come from there in the sense of like growing up there, I think that would have been a really cool opportunity because like I remember Kathy Freeman, this like Aboriginal sprinter that won the gold medal at the Olympics. She was like a big inspiration for me when I was in high school, and I actually met her randomly at the track in Berkeley one day when I was in college, and she was just like working out at the track and we were training there, and I was like, wait, I was like, I think that's her. So I went over and like, I told her I was Aboriginal Australian, and she was like freaked out in a weird, not in like a like scared sense, but more just like trying to compute what I was doing at like here, and I don't have an accent, and she was just very confused. But she was really cool, and I got to meet her. So I think from that perspective, that would have been really cool to represent Australia as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's jump into trending topics. This is a rapid fire game where I'll read off some news headlines, and our guest, Calen, as well as Amobi, will give their opinions on these headlines using the soccer card system. So we got 2 this week. Oh, let me run down the rules for those not familiar. No card is you agree with it, you're cool with it. Yellow card, you're indifferent. Red card is, I disagree. And then you guys will give a short explanation of why you gave it. You all right over there, Mo? Why you gave it that card? All right. So we got 2 this week. Let's jump right into it. So San Diego Wave are selling their kits at their match in limited quantities with the Wave FC name sets only, so no customization, for $200. I don't know if they're authentic. I don't know if they're replicas, but they're charging $200 at the game for their template jerseys. So what card are we giving San Diego Wave for this pricing?
Calen, you want to take it away first?
Okay, is this like autographed by the whole team? Do I get to meet the whole team? No, okay, none of that. It's just the jersey.
This is just jersey, and then it says SD Wave on the back, number 22. That's it. Like you don't get any other customizations.
That's a yellow. That's a yellow for me. I'd give a yellow to just how much like boots cost in general. But I got to be careful here because my future collective clothing line, like the hats were like $70 or something like that. So it's like, people could come for me for this. So yeah, I'm down for the like limited exclusive whole thing, but at a certain point, I think you lose me a little bit, and so I'm gonna have to go. I'm not like it's offensive, but it's a yellow. I'm gonna say it's a yellow card. And I like the Wave. I like Alex Morgan. She's a Berkeley girl, so you gotta rep. What do you say, Amobi?
Yeah, respect. I'm going red card. I mean, you got to pay to go to the game. You got to pay for the parking. You got to pay for the food. It's a whole experience. Obviously, you do want to support the team, but I'm not. $200 for a jersey on top of $200 for cleats, on top of $50 for shin guards, on top of that stuff adds up. So for me, But like you said, it's a business. If there's going to be people that pay for it, so me personally, I'm not paying for that. So red card. As I'm wearing my anti-spam money club shirt.
For those who are initiated, you know that the whole league is Nike, so you know that Nike jerseys replicas are about 90, right? And then add a name set, at most they should be like 119.
Right.
But 200, and I doubt that they're going to be authentics. That's kind of reaching. You know what I mean? But I will throw them a bone. You know, Nike's having supply chain issues, so that could be another issue or another reason why they're so expensive. Is they only were able to get so many, and they try to make a thing out of it. So either way, if I had a vote, it would be a red card for me.
That's fair.
All right, so let's move on to the next.
I'm not going first again next time, by the way. It's not.
All right, next one. Naomi Osaka has left IMG along with her agent Stuart Dugweed to open her own agency called Evolve. So both will hold equity stakes in the firm and they have not taken any outside investment. So what card are we giving Naomi for making this move?
No card. I think it's a great move. I think it's a testament to how athlete empowerment is continuing to go. I mean, as an athlete, you already represent yourself. So she might as well take it, take full control and kind of go from there. I think the biggest thing now is her organization, her firm going to represent other athletes, or is this strictly for her? Because if so, then you don't really need to set up a agency. So interesting to see if they get who their clients are going to be, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'll say definitely no card. I think, does LeBron don't they have an agency component or no? Yeah, or is that
they do, but he's technically he's not allowed to say he's part of it. So he got Clutch, but he's represented by Clutch.
Oh, got it.
No ownership.
Okay. I think it's cool, and Moby said, taking ownership, and I mean she's an owner of the NWSL team, and so I just think having that player perspective at the ownership level, I think you'll get a chance to see what that can do for the league, the growth of the league, as well as a way that it can grow in a place that's also responsible to players as well. And looking at, she's been very vocal about that, and in her own life, but I think the idea that she could help support other athletes to do that with her platform would be really cool too. So she's making big moves.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what she does with it. She already has an all-encompassing business, so you look at it like Katie and Rich Kleiman. It's kind of one of those situations. Rich was Katie's agent, and they broke off, started 35 Ventures boardroom, and I could see her kind of taking that model. She's actually been pretty closely aligned with them, so that's probably where she got the idea from. But either way, I think it's definitely dope, and I think we'll definitely see more savvy athletes doing things like this in the future, especially ones that make the amount of money to be able to do investments and kind of take control of their own brand. So I think we'll definitely start seeing more of this in the very near future, actually. So yeah,
most definitely. Elle, you got anything else?
Nah, that was the last one.
Okay. Well, Calen, thank you so much for taking the time. How can people support you? How can they get, in touch with, some of the wonderful things that you got in the works?
No, thanks for having me on, guys. I love the show. If anybody wants to follow along, I would say 94 Till Infinity, you can listen to that first episode. It's an independent project, so it's just under my own name, but it's on all kind of places you would listen to podcasts. There's a Substack page for it as well that you can find on my Twitter account, which is just at Calen Carr. Or I'm on Instagram as well. So just hit me up.
Yeah, most definitely. Make sure you guys go and support Calen. Got a lot of cool things in the works. 94 Till Infinity, Future Collective when that comes back, and just some other endeavors that he got in the works. Someone that has his hands on a lot of different things and making some great impact and providing a lot of value. I definitely will be reaching out, trying to figure out this freelance contract type thing that you do. I know L's gonna be touching base with you.
Likewise.
But that's
what episode is this for you guys? What number is this?
This is 79.
We pushing
79.
79.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So you guys need to teach me something because I made one. But I got.
Hey, yours has a lot more production value than ours, though.
No. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I love the show, and like all the guests you guys have on. I always feel like I learned something. So I appreciate you guys including me in that list.
You checking us out.
Respect. Yeah, but that's our show for this week. Subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us get discovered. Follow us on the socials at 2Cents FC Show. Check out our merch at 2centsport.shop and tweet us your comments on the show. Any topics you want me or Elle to discuss. Trying to come at you guys with some heavy hitters. Make sure you guys tune in, and thank you guys for the support.
Peace out.